and welcome to Brass and Bliss. Today we're making an exciting card using this stamp set which was released in March, and it's called the Hello There, and I'm also using some additional products to go with this card. So I've gone ahead and stamped this large stamp from the stamp set using a blue color fuse ink, and I'm going to use that to make this. So the idea of the card is to create a faux embroidery look. Now this is not something that is made by me. I've seen a couple of artists on the internet do this kind of art before, and I've learned a few tricks and techniques, and I've created my own little embellishments to it to make it look more real to me, or more original to me. So again, not my original idea, but I've taken inspirations from other artists to create something, create this that's called the faux embroidery. Sorry, I'm unable to talk today. Anyway, so I'm starting here. As I said, I've taken this large stamp set and I've stamped it using a blue color fuse ink, and I'm using this really fine micro black pen, and I am outlining these flowers. And it's important to do this as we progress into the project. You will see why it's important to outline these images for the steps that we have to do. So be very careful and very deliberate when you are inking or tracing this image. I'm also trying to keep the pen to the outside edge of the image, so that way it gives me a tiny bit of thickness to what I want to do when I go to start coloring. So here I'm just finishing off this part, and you can see how I have gone ahead and outlined. Now forget about all those tiny images that the stamp has. We're not going to use that, and it's all going to be hidden by the time the project is done. So once I've done that, now it's time to color. So I've gone ahead and chosen a few Copic markers for this. Obviously you can choose any coloring medium you like. I have used Copic, and I'm also going to use some Prisma color pencils as well. The colors that I have used, I am going to put it in the description box below. So first I'm just going to draw a line like in a circle following the curve of the flower. I'm just drawing two parallel lines. So I'm going to take a darker pen here so you can see better. That was quite light, and when I started to do this I realized this ink was dying. But anyway, here you go. I'm just trying to trace it, and you can see it better what I'm doing. So you can see while I'm drawing, I'm making sure that I'm going along the curve of the flower. So don't draw straight lines, but curve your lines along with the petals. Now it's time to color. So I'm going to start with this darkest pink shade here, and I'm going to draw lines from the line that we created, those parallel lines that we created. Now when you're drawing those lines or flicking lines, make sure you're leaving gaps between them. You're not coloring solid, we're adding lines. You see on the side that I showed you, we're adding tiny bits of light, and you can see how you can see the different colors in that blend. So we're not really blending. I don't know how to explain this. We're kind of making flicking lines showing pretty much all the colors. So once we have done that, you can see the lines very predominantly. Now I'm going to take a Prisma color pencil. I think I went to search for it. There you go. A darker Prisma color pencil from in that pink shade itself, and I'm going to start drawing lines again from the bottom part where the darkest part of the color is, and I'm going to draw some lines, flicking some lines. Make sure your pencil is nice and sharp so that you can draw some really thin flicks. And once we're done doing that, you can see that it's not blended, but they are separated. And then I'm going to take this white color pencil, Prisma color pencil, and I'm going to come from the top, flicking into the bottom. So I'm not going all the way down to the edge, but I'm just flicking it on the top, just to add a little bit of a highlight. And you can see from a distance, it almost looks like you stitched that flower petal. And then to add some more detail to it, I'm just going to take this black pen once again, and I'm going to draw dots very rapid, like just goes fast enough dots to show that the needle has gone through those points. So it makes it look like if you've sewn it on a cloth, if that makes sense. I'm going to do this once more. It did take me a while. Now, this is not a project that you will be doing on a daily basis or something that's a quick project. It is time consuming, but the end result, believe me, is beautiful. Now, I have to tell you a little story. When I was a little girl, my aunt was the one who taught me to do embroidery, and my mom was fascinated by white bed sheets in the house. She would only put white bed sheets on all our beds and expect us not to climb on it and make it dirty. So what I did is I learned embroidery from my aunt, and I actually started doing embroidery on those white bed sheets, especially the ones that my mom would put in our bedroom. And that's how I took a liking. Now, I don't have that much time to do embroidery because it is a time consuming thing, but when I saw this technique on the internet the other day, I was like, oh my, this is beautiful. And here we are doing this. You know, it's still time consuming, but definitely not as time consuming as really doing an embroidery on a cloth. Anyway, so as I'm chatting along, you can see here I did that same thing again on the second petal as well, and I've gone ahead and finished the entire flower in the same way. Now in the center, I'm just taking a yellow Prismacolor pencil, and I'm just drawing dots, but making sure that the dots are strong, like push your pencil hard enough into the paper to create this dot so that it looks like the needle's gone in and out and you've made those knot stitches. Now if you're not familiar with embroidery, there are certain terms which I have kind of forgotten most of the terms, but I know this one particular is called a knot stitch. Obviously this is just dots using pencil, but that's what they would do if you were to make a flower. And then for the stems, we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to draw diagonal lines just to kind of show me where the base of the darkest color is going to be. So those lines that you're drawing is for you to, one, separate the image, and then also to show you where the darkest color will fall. So now I have drawn the line, so you can see I'm going to start the darkest color where I drew the lines, and it's the same process again what we did with the flowers. You can see here I'm putting in the darkest color, which is my YT67 here, and then I'm going to now keep in mind the stem is not too large, so you may not be able to see as much of the variation in the texture in the coloring, but it will once we add the pencil, because the pencil really adds that texture, because it's such a fine line. The pencil's sharpness is so fine that it can really create this fine thread-like image. And you can see there in those flowers, if you notice, those pencils make a big difference. And now I'm going to add this dark green pencil, and now you can start seeing, if you can see those really fine lines that I am drawing, and that makes a big difference. So having a pencil is a great idea for this technique. Now you don't have to use Prismacolors in Copic. You can use whatever alcohol colors or colors that you are comfortable with. If you were using watercolor, you can actually color it solid, and then you can add the texture or the lines of the thread using the color pencil. And once I'm done adding all of this, you can see how because it's a smaller section, it's not as visible as the larger section. Now let's do the background, and really the background is what ties this entire image beautifully, and it makes it look like an embroidery patch. I don't know, when I was a little girl, my grandmother was also a seamstress, and she used to love doing embroidery herself. She would make dresses for us at home and create these applique patches, embroidery patches, and put it on our dresses. And when I finished making this, that's probably what I thought in my mind. Now forget about those dark lines that came because my ruler was not clean, and that's why that black marker came into that. But it's not a big deal because all of that will be covered once we're done adding. So you can see here, this is what I'm doing. I'm flicking the lines and keeping it separate. I'm not blending them. They are separate. So I'm starting here with BG13 and I'm going to do the same thing, keeping the lines separated with the next lighter color. And then I'm going to end it with the next lighter color. And you can see in a bigger image, it's a lot more visible. And I'm going to do the same technique over and over again until this entire background is filled. Now I'm keeping that edge. You can see that edge. I'm not going into the edge of the image. I'm only staying inside because we're going to do something else to the edge of the image. So ignore that edge for a moment. And I'm just doing the second line so that you can see the difference between the two. Now when you add the white highlight coming from the top to the bottom, it makes the embroidery look like it is bumped, like the four is, you know, like there is a, I don't know what to call it, like there's a bump on it. So it shows the levels, different levels, you know. You can see as if the way I'm adding the pencil, it looks like it is underneath. The next level that's above it is like it goes underneath the top edge of the bottom level, if that makes any sense to you. But I really hope you can see what I'm trying to say, because I'm sure my explanation is not doing any form of justice. Anyway, here you go. I'm adding the white highlight pencil there to show that the embroidery is curving on each of those sections. And you can see how that pencil adds to the coloring, to the actual finished part of the faux embroidery. And here you can see much more clear. I've zoomed in a bit so you can see a little clearly what exactly I'm doing. And you can see here, and I'm adding those dots in between those two lines to create needle holes as we embroidery. And here you can see this is the finished look of the entire floral. Now I've also gone ahead and I've taken a black pen and I've done a zigzag around the petals, which I'm going to show here. I'm taking this black pen and just on the edge I'm going to create this zigzag line going all over the patch, and that creates like a border that you would create in embroidery patches. If you've noticed, there's always a border which is zigzag, either in the black color or the color of the artist's choice. Here I've chosen a black ink, and that's because remember we had black for our flowers. We outdrew the line, and that's the reason why we used the black ink to create that zigzag pattern. Now I'm taking this gold watercolor paint and I'm just really diluting it. My pan is almost done. There's really not much of a paint left. If you see, it's only on those edges that I have those watercolor paints. I've used this a lot, so I've hardly any paint in there. I'm struggling to get some paint, but I do get enough for this patch. And then I'm just going to go around that border, and you can see here, this is why I was saying we're not going to do anything to that border. We're going to leave it blank because we're going to add this golden edge around it, because I've seen many patches that do have gold edging on them, and that's what I'm trying to imitate here. And here you can see the finished patch. Now for the background, I am taking this cover plate. This is called the round petal cover plate, and I've gone ahead and I have die cut that image onto a white cardstock, and not the cover plate onto a white cardstock. And I'm actually going to use this as a stencil. I'm not using the die cut itself, but I'm going to use the ink blended side of it. So I've taken a pink cardstock and I've taken a few color fuse inks here, and I'm going to blend this on through that die cut to create the impression. Now it did take me a while because it was coloring mostly the die cut on the top and was not really going in, so I had to really ink the brush very well in order for that ink to go through it. Now if I had used a smaller brush, probably it would have been easier, but I did not have a smaller brush, so yeah, it took me a while. But anyway, I went ahead and I struggled a bit, and I finished blending. So I used 3 different colors because I wanted to have a slight ombre, and you'll see it wasn't a whole lot of ombre color, but it was enough to show the difference. And I went ahead and blended it using those 3 colors, and very soon I'll be done here. And once I was done blending, I am going to remove this, and you can see how it's beautifully stenciled at the bottom. And you can see that the pink looks a little too stark, so I'm just going to take a little bit more of the pink ink, and I'm going to go over it so that the cardstock doesn't look that light pink. I wanted it to look like it's faded, like a material, like a cloth, you know, with a print in it. Now the die cut piece itself, which got this beautiful coloring on it, I kept it aside for another project. And then I went ahead and splattered it with some watercolor, gold watercolor, and die cut it using this inside scallop die cut. And then I adhered these all to a white note card, and I also die cut and stamped a sentiment from the same stamp set called I Miss You on a black cardstock with gold embossing powder, and put them all together to finish this card. I really hope you enjoyed this technique and you will give this technique a go. Here are some close-up of these pictures. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.